Can you bring us a little bit maybe into your editing room and editing? How do you build the different layers? Because also the music, of course, it's not only atmosphere. It's a very important character, I would say. So how do you balance that out?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. The music is absolutely crucial. Digging into that period, for me, it sort of drifted above the surface that the music was very much a political agent. It became literally that we had to make it into a protagonist. You know, when Patrice Lumumba is released from prison and he's arriving at the round table, he's accompanied by African jazz, Joseph Kabasele and Dr. Nico. And on the spot, 2 days later, on 27th of January 1960, when independence is claimed, the musicians on the spot composed the song Indépendance Cha-Cha at the Plaza Hotel in Brussels, and it becomes like a big hit in the continent of Africa, where even in the former Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, where Indépendance Cha-Cha became the liberation movement for independence of Rhodesia. And so it's also like the film is bookended by the drum salvo, opening salvo of Max Roach, and ends with the scream of Abby Lincoln. But it's Abby Lincoln with the Women's Coalition, the Women's Rider Coalition in Harlem, that initiated the protests at the United Nations. This is actually the concept of We Insist Freedom Now album by Max Roach Quartet was in its entirely broadcast on Belgian television. The Belgian television is co-produced, but we found it in the archives. And so it was not sort of far away to sort of make that jump. You see that woman screaming in the Security Council, which is actually Rosa Guy. Rosa Guy and Maya Angelou were the writers living in Harlem. It's not Abby Lincoln, but the scream was so obvious to actually add that to the end of the film. And so it's musicians. There was not the only musician. Max Roach was there, Paul Robertson, which was a subplot we cut out of the film. Amiri Baraka was there, but he didn't make it into the Security Council. But again, it's the musicians that actually started that protest. And then, of course, the story of the black jazz ambassadors. So the jazz ambassadors, you know, when of course you have the United Nations General Assembly, where there's a political earthquake happening, where 16 African countries are admitted to the United Nations, which makes that actually a global shift is happening within the General Assembly. The way East and West is going to deal with that is that Nikita Khrushchev is playing on the global south by proposing the decolonization resolution, but the United States actually is sending arm twisters within the General Assembly to buy up the votes, but also sends black jazz ambassadors to the Middle East, to the Congo, and they're being used to propagate, of course, democracy, to win the hearts and minds of the people, but it's very schizophrenic because back home there's still segregation. So black ambassadors feel very schizophrenic. And it's not because they were used as passive instrument that actually, it's not that they were used as a propaganda tool that they're passive instruments. They very much also were sort of, in a way, looking at this in a very different way. When Louis Armstrong arrives on the continent, he refused to play for the apartheid audience in South Africa. Or he changes his lyrics in I'm white inside in the black and blue song into I'm right inside. So there's in a subtle way even sort of a protest also being pushed into that role of a black jazz ambassador. But indeed the music is, as a thread, is very important. But the way we thought about it in the editing was, if we treat the musicians as protagonists and we sort of inspire ourselves on the Blue Note albums with the text, why don't we actually treat the politicians in a similar way? And so, you know, if music is sort of stepping onto the political stage, the politicians became sort of part of the way they become lead singers in the jazz composition. That's how we thought about it. And so there's a back and forth between the politics and the music, of course. While the politics is about divide and conquer, the music is very much about bringing people together. Because it was called the Empire of Silence, l'Empire du Silence, that thing that happening over there was sort of an unacknowledgement within Belgium. And I often speak about othering. The othering, for example, in the United States, the othering happened within the transatlantic passage. The othering was very much part of society. It was articulated within. But in Belgium, the articulation is out there. We didn't have to talk about it because it was hidden out there. And so it's only now that that sort of conversation comes back home. And the othering is being, the articulation about that is very much an articulation today, and yeah, the mercenaries are part of that, but it's not something that has disappeared. It's not something that disappeared. The mining industry, Union Minière de Haute-Katanga, which was privately owned by Leopold II, including also the Congo, was privately owned by Leopold II. But Union Minière de Haute-Katanga is a company that still exists. It's called Umicore, and it's still the same system. It's still the same shit in East Congo. You know, they're holding the hand above Kagame, who's actually indirectly sponsoring the private mercenaries today, M23, to actually chase out the villages by way of rape. You know, they're using rape as a tool of war to actually make the villages empty, to get at the conflict minerals which are now sold, and then you get it to your iPhone. That's why the iPhone commercial is there as well. But it hasn't changed. And if you put a map on East Congo, there's a direct correlation between the mining sites and the statistics of raped women. And that's also the statistics after the iPhone that you get, that sort of, it's something not like a mercenary in the 1960s, it's something that really is still present today. But I'm with Michael Hart, who talks about global apartheid, and it's not just, you know, when we talk about decolonization, I'm with Ashun Bembi, that actually we're all being colonized. And it's the perpetrator as well as the perpetrated upon that actually are suffering from trauma. Not guilt. I think guilt is a bad advisor, but trauma is actually something that has to be shared, and you sit around the table and you dialogue about it. You know, still now, today in Belgium, because they're about to thinking of making King Baudouin into a saint, by the way. They're talking about it this week in Rome. And then they're still discussing, are we going to apologize to the Congolese or not? This is so far out of my head that if you apologize as well, it means you admit sort of a crime, and then you have to talk about restitution. And so the discussion, the articulation in Belgium lags so much behind, I feel.